There may be something wrong in your body right now, but not where the pain is. A crooked nose wall, a collapsed foot arch, or a tiny hidden imbalance could be quietly reshaping how you breathe, walk, sleep, and suffer without you ever knowing. There may be something in your body right now that is not quite straight, not quite balanced, not quite shaped the way you think it is, and the most disturbing part is that you may have built your entire life around it without ever knowing. Maybe the side of your nose that never fully opens is not just allergies. Maybe the shoulder that always sits higher is not just bad posture. Maybe the pain in your lower back did not really begin in your back. Maybe your body has been compensating for a hidden structural difference for years, quietly adjusting, quietly protecting you, quietly paying the price. That is what fascinates me. The body does not always warn us with a dramatic symptom. Sometimes it whispers through small things we learn to ignore. A blocked nostril, a tilted hip, a foot that rolls inward, a neck that lives too far forward, a belly that domes when it should stabilize. At first, these things seem too ordinary to matter. Then one day, they become part of how we breathe, walk, sleep, stand, and feel pain. Welcome to Thuelth Lateris 6. If this kind of deep, useful exploration makes you see yourself differently, subscribe to the channel. Your support gives me more motivation to keep creating videos that are not just interesting, but genuinely helpful. Now, I do not want us to enter this topic with fear. That would be the wrong way to listen. Many body differences are harmless. Some are common, some never need treatment. But understanding them matters, because the body is not a collection of separate parts. It is one connected system. When one part changes, another part adapts. When the foot collapses, the knee may follow. When the head moves forward, the neck works harder. When one leg is slightly shorter, the spine may compensate. And when the body compensates long enough, discomfort can start to feel normal. So today, I want us to look closer. Not to panic, not to self-diagnose, but to ask a better question. What if the symptom you keep treating is not the real source? Because your body may have been telling a story for years. You just were never taught how to read it. If the body has been telling a story for years, then the first chapter I want us to read is hidden in the places we use every second, but almost never truly examine. The nose, the tongue, the throat, and the small details around the ear. Let's start with breathing, because breathing is so constant that most of us do not question it unless it becomes hard. You may think you know your own breath. You may think the way air moves through your nose is simply the way it has always been. But inside the nose, there is a wall called the nasal septum, the structure that separates the two nasal passages. In a perfectly centered nose, air would move through both sides evenly. But many people do not have that perfect center line. The septum can bend or shift to one side, narrowing one passage and making the other feel more open. What makes a deviated septum so easy to miss is that it often hides behind ordinary explanations. One side of the nose always feels blocked, so you call it allergies. You wake up with a dry mouth, so you blame the air in the room. You snore, breathe louder than others, or feel like you never get enough air through one nostril, and you tell yourself, that is just how my nose works. But what if it is not just how your nose works? What if the space itself is different? That question changes everything for me. Because a person can spend years trying to treat congestion without realizing the problem is not only swelling, dust, weather, or sinus irritation. Sometimes the structure is part of the story. And once structure enters the story, you stop asking only, how do I clear this? You begin asking, why is this always happening on the same side? Now move from the nose to the tongue, another part of the body we use constantly but rarely think about deeply. Under your tongue is a small band of tissue that connects it to the floor of the mouth. It seems minor, almost unimportant. But if that band is too short, too thick, or attached too far forward, it can restrict the tongue's movement. This is often called tongue tie. Most of us associate tongue tie with babies. But adults can carry mild or moderate tongue tie without ever realizing it. They learn to speak with it. They learn to swallow with it. They learn to chew, rest, and sleep with it. Their body adapted before they were old enough to question the adaptation. That is the part that stays with me. If the tongue cannot move freely, the jaw may help more than it should. The neck may hold extra tension. The throat may recruit muscles differently. A speech pattern may become part of someone's identity. Jaw tightness may be blamed on stress. Neck tension may be treated as posture. Even sleep can be affected, because tongue position matters more for the airway than most people realize. I am not saying every jaw problem or speech pattern comes from tongue tie. That would be too simple. But I am saying this. A small restriction in the mouth can create a chain of compensation that reaches farther than we expect. Now imagine looking all the way to the back of the throat. The uvula is that small piece of tissue hanging down in the center. For most people, it is one single rounded piece. But for some, it is split into two small lobes. This is called a bifid uvula. For many people, it causes no trouble at all, no pain, no obvious limitation. But I still find it strangely meaningful, because it is a visible trace of how the palate formed before birth. It reminds me that some body differences are not injuries, not habits, not failures. They are developmental signatures. Quiet evidence of how the body assembled itself before we ever opened our eyes. And then there is the tiny hole some people have just in front of the ear. A preauricular pit can look like almost nothing, a small dot where the ear meets the side of the face. Most people who have it never think about it unless it gets irritated or someone notices it. But that little mark comes from the way the ear formed in early development, when small pieces of tissue fused together to create the outer ear. That is what I find so mysterious about this part of the body. The face is not only expression. The mouth is not only speech. The nose is not only breathing. The ear is not only hearing. These places carry clues about structure, development, adaptation, and history. And when you start seeing them that way, even the smallest detail no longer feels random. Once those tiny clues in the face and airway stop feeling random, the next place I want us to look is the way your body holds itself against gravity. Because posture is not just how you stand. It is the shape of your daily life slowly becoming visible. Think about your head for a second. Not your face, not your thoughts, not the expression you show the world, but the actual weight of your head sitting on top of your spine. When it is balanced directly over your shoulders, your neck has a fair chance. The bones stack. The muscles share the load. The body does not have to fight itself just to keep you upright. But when the head drifts forward, everything changes. And what is disturbing to me is that most of us did not choose this position consciously. We trained it. We trained it quietly. We trained it while looking down at phones, leaning toward laptops, driving, editing, working, scrolling, answering messages, and staring into screens that slowly pulled our head in front of our body. At first, it feels like nothing. Just focus. Just work. Just a few more minutes. But the body remembers what we repeat. If the head lives forward long enough, the neck begins to carry a burden it was never meant to carry all day. The muscles at the back of the neck tighten. The shoulders begin to round. The upper back stiffens. The base of the skull can start to ache. The jaw may become tense in a way that feels unrelated. That is what fascinates me about forward head posture. It does not arrive like an injury. It arrives like a habit that became architecture. And because it builds slowly, we often treat the symptoms separately. We rub the shoulders. We stretch the neck. We blame the headache on stress. We blame the jaw tension on sleep. We blame the upper back pain on the chair. Maybe all of those things play a role. But the deeper question is this: where is your head living in relation to the rest of your body? That question feels simple, but it can change the whole way you see discomfort. Still, not every uneven shape in the body comes from modern habits. Sometimes the structure underneath was never perfectly straight to begin with. That is where mild scoliosis becomes important. If you look at someone from behind, you might notice one shoulder sitting a little higher than the other. One hip may appear slightly raised. One side of the waist may look more curved. It is easy to dismiss this as poor posture. We say, stand up straight. We say, pull your shoulders back. We say, stop leaning. But sometimes the spine itself has a sideways curve. Mild scoliosis can be quiet. It may not cause obvious pain. It may not limit someone dramatically. But that does not mean the body is not adapting around it. A slight curve can change how the shoulders balance, how the hips carry weight, how the muscles on each side of the spine work, and how fatigue builds over time. What makes me feel a lot of empathy here is that many people with mild structural asymmetry spend years thinking they are simply failing at posture. They are told to correct something that may not be fully correctable by effort alone, and that can create a strange kind of frustration. You try to stand straighter, but your body keeps returning to its own pattern. That does not mean nothing can be done. It means the conversation has to be more honest. Posture is not always discipline. Sometimes posture is negotiation with the structure you have. Now move from the back to the chest. Pectus excavatum is one of those conditions that can be physically visible but emotionally hidden. It happens when the breastbone sinks inward, creating a hollow in the center of the chest. In mild cases, clothing can hide it. In more noticeable cases, it can change how a person feels in their own body long before anyone talks about medical symptoms. And I think that emotional part matters. Imagine being young and realizing your chest does not look like other people's chests. Maybe nobody explains it. Maybe you never hear the name. Maybe you just learn to avoid swimming, avoid locker rooms, avoid changing shirts around others, avoid situations where someone might notice. You may tell yourself it is not a big deal, but the body remembers embarrassment too. In moderate or severe cases, the inward chest shape can also affect physical function. Some people may feel short of breath with exercise. Some may feel their stamina is lower than expected. Some may experience palpitations or discomfort and be told it is anxiety or poor fitness. And yes, anxiety and fitness can matter, but structure can matter too. That is why I do not like when visible body differences are treated as only cosmetic. Sometimes they are cosmetic. Sometimes they are functional. Sometimes they are emotional. Often, they are all three. Now let's turn to the shoulder blade, because this is one of the places where the body can look almost normal until you ask it to move. If a person pushes against a wall with both arms extended, the shoulder blades should usually stay close to the rib cage. But in some people, one shoulder blade lifts away from the back. It sticks out, almost like a wing. That is called a winged scapula. What looks like bad posture may actually be a problem with shoulder blade control. The muscles that anchor the scapula may be weak or not firing well. Sometimes the nerve that helps control those muscles has been irritated or affected. The person may not even notice the winging itself. They may only know that overhead movements feel weaker on one side, the shoulder gets tired easily, or there is a dull ache near the shoulder blade that never quite disappears. And again, the same lesson returns. The place where you feel the problem may not be the whole story. A shoulder that feels weak may be a shoulder blade that is not stable. A neck that feels tight may be a head that has drifted forward. A back that feels uneven may be a spine or pelvis adapting to a curve. A chest that looks different may carry both physical and emotional weight. The neck, spine, chest, and shoulder blades are not separate chapters. They are one connected story about how your body meets gravity every single day. And once you understand that, posture stops being a shallow command to stand up straight. It becomes something much deeper. It becomes a record of habits, structure, compensation, protection, and time. If posture is the record of how your body meets gravity, then your feet are the place where that entire conversation begins. I used to think of feet as simple. They carry us. They get tired. They hurt after a long day. That was it. But the more I looked into how the body works, the more I realized that the feet are not just the bottom of the body. They are the foundation of the whole structure. Every step starts there. Every shift in balance starts there. Every time you stand, walk, run, climb stairs, or lean to one side, the ground sends force through your feet first, and your body has to organize itself around that force. That is why flat feet are more important than many people realize. The arch of the foot is not just a curve, it is a shock absorber. It helps distribute pressure. It gives the foot a way to be both flexible and stable. But when that arch collapses, even partly, the mechanics of the whole lower body can change. The ankle may roll inward. The knee may follow that inward direction. The hip may rotate slightly to compensate. The lower back may begin absorbing stress it was never supposed to carry in that way. And the strange part is, the foot itself may not be the place that hurts. That is what makes flat feet so easy to miss. A person may go looking for the cause of knee pain. They may stretch their back. They may blame tight hips. They may buy different shoes because their legs feel tired. They may treat plantar fasciitis, shin splints, or lower back discomfort as separate problems. But underneath all of it, the body may be responding to the way the foot meets the ground. That idea changed the way I look at pain. Because if the arch collapses and the knee starts tracking differently, the pain in the knee is real, but it may not be the beginning of the story. It may be the middle of the story. Now look at the toes, because even something as small as toe length can quietly change the way you move. If your second toe extends farther than your big toe, that is often called Morton's toe. Many people have it and never think about it as anything meaningful. It is just the shape of their foot. Maybe it makes certain shoes uncomfortable. Maybe it creates a callus in one spot. Maybe it has always been there, so it feels too normal to question. But walking is not random. Your toes help determine how weight leaves the foot at the end of each step. In many people, the big toe plays a major role in push-off. It gives leverage. It helps guide the body forward. But when the second toe is longer, pressure may shift differently through the front of the foot. The second metatarsal area may take more load. The forefoot may become irritated. Over time, the gait can subtly change. And this is the part that keeps pulling me deeper into this subject. One step does not seem like much, but thousands of steps a day create a pattern. A tiny difference repeated long enough can become a whole body adjustment. The foot changes the ankle changes the knee changes the hip changes the back. And suddenly, something that looked like a small toe variation becomes part of a much larger movement chain. Then there is the accessory navicular, which sounds technical, but the idea is simple. Some people have an extra piece of bone near the inner arch of the foot, close to the navicular bone. For many, it causes no problem. They may never know it exists. But for others, that extra bone can create a painful bump on the inside of the foot, especially during activity. What makes this one frustrating is that it can feel a lot like plantar fasciitis, arch pain that worsens with movement, relief with rest. So a person may roll the bottom of the foot, stretch the calf, change shoes, and treat the pain as if the fascia is the main issue. But if the real problem is an extra bone irritating the surrounding tissue, then the usual approach may not fully solve it. That is why naming the right thing matters. Not because labels are magic, but because the wrong explanation can trap you in the wrong solution. You keep working hard, but you are working on the wrong problem. Now let's move from the foot to the length of the legs. One leg can be slightly shorter than the other. Sometimes the difference is small and the body handles it without much trouble. But when the difference is enough to affect movement, the pelvis may tilt. One hip may sit higher. The spine may curve slightly to keep the head level. The knee on one side may take stress differently. Even the way the shoes wear down can reveal that the body is not loading both sides the same way. This is where I feel a strange respect for the body. It does not give up easily. If one leg is shorter, the body does not stop you from walking. It adjusts. It drops one side. It rotates something else. It tightens one muscle, relaxes another, shifts the pelvis, bends the spine, and lets you keep moving. But compensation always has a cost. Maybe that cost becomes low back pain. Maybe it becomes hip irritation. Maybe it becomes knee discomfort. Maybe it becomes a walking pattern you never noticed because it has been yours for as long as you can remember. And that is the deeper lesson of the lower body. The ground may be where the clue begins, even when the pain appears somewhere else. So when you think about your feet, do not think of them as separate from the rest of you. Look at how they stand. Look at how they collapse. Look at where your shoes wear down. Look at whether one leg feels like it reaches the ground differently. Look at whether pain keeps returning higher up the chain even after you treat the place that hurts. Because sometimes the body is not asking us to look where the pain is loudest. Sometimes it is asking us to look where the pattern begins. If the pattern can begin at the ground, then the final lesson is quieter. Some of the most revealing clues on the body are the ones we were taught to dismiss as nothing. Take the little finger, for example. Look at the pinky. If it bends inward toward the ring finger, that curve has a name, clinodactyly. For most people, it does not stop the hand from working. It does not create pain. It does not demand a dramatic solution. It is simply there, a small angle in the body's design. But I think there is something strangely comforting about that. Not every difference is a warning. Not every unusual shape means something is wrong. Sometimes a body variation is just a variation. And still, naming it matters, because the moment you can name something, it loses some of its mystery. It stops feeling like a private oddity and becomes part of the wide range of ways human bodies are built. The same is true with a supernumerary nipple. Many people who have one think it is just a mole, a tiny mark on the torso, easy to ignore, easy to forget. But during early development, the body forms along what is sometimes called a milk line, and in some people, a small extra nipple remains somewhere along that path. Usually, it causes no problem. And yet, that little mark carries a story. It is not random skin. It is a leftover from the body's construction process, a trace from a time before memory. That is what I keep coming back to. The body is not only something we live in, it is something that was built, shaped, adjusted, and carried through time. Then there is diastasis recti, and this one deserves attention because people often misunderstand it. The abdominal muscles run down the front of the body in two long bands. Between them is connective tissue. When that gap becomes widened and stretched, the center of the abdomen may bulge or dome outward, especially during a crunch or when sitting up. A lot of people assume this is just weak abs. Some think it is stubborn belly fat. Some train harder, doing more crunches, more sit-ups, more force, hoping effort will fix it. But if the midline is not managing pressure properly, more force can sometimes make the problem worse. The body does not always need punishment. Sometimes it needs precision, better breathing, better bracing, better control, a smarter way back to stability. And that is where I want to leave this with you. The point of noticing these things is not to become afraid of your body. It is to become more honest with it. Some differences are harmless. Some deserve attention. Some explain discomfort that has been misunderstood for years. So do not look at your body with panic. Look at it with curiosity. Check one thing. Ask one better question. And if something has been painful, limited, unusual, or getting worse, let this be your reminder to seek a proper evaluation instead of guessing. Because your body has been telling a story all along. And now, maybe, you are finally learning how to read it. Today la duan duk kek kui video, viet bung ting an jong mi, noi dung tin thun kichban venyan kak biet ko truk ko they thung bi ba qua. When I think about all of these hidden body differences, the thing that stays with me is not fear. It is humility. Because the body is far more intelligent, more patient, and more mysterious than most of us realize. It can carry imbalance for years. It can adjust to pressure. It can protect us from pain by shifting the burden somewhere else. It can keep us moving, breathing, working, and living, even when something underneath the surface is not functioning as smoothly as it could. But the body's ability to adapt is also the reason we miss so much. We get used to one blocked nostril. We get used to the neck tension. We get used to the shoulder that sits higher. We get used to the foot that rolls inward. We get used to the back pain that comes and goes. We get used to small things until they no longer feel like signals. They just become me. And maybe that is the deeper lesson here. Not everything familiar is normal. And not everything normal needs to be ignored. The real wisdom is learning the difference. This does not mean we should become obsessed with every small detail of our body. That would only create anxiety. But it does mean we should become more observant, more honest, more willing to ask better questions. Instead of immediately asking, how do I make this pain go away? Maybe we should ask, what pattern is my body repeating? Instead of only asking, where does it hurt? Maybe we should ask, where did this chain begin? That is how we apply this in real life. Tonight, look at one thing. Not everything, just one. Notice how you breathe through your nose. Notice how your feet touch the ground. Notice whether your head sits forward when you use your phone. Notice whether one shoulder always feels tighter. Notice whether your body keeps giving you the same message in different ways. And if something has been painful, limited, unusual, or getting worse over time, do not just guess. Do not shame yourself. Do not force your body harder without understanding what it needs. Let curiosity guide you toward proper evaluation, better movement, smarter habits, and more respect for the structure you live in every day. Because your body is not your enemy. It is a messenger. And the more carefully you listen, the more clearly it speaks. If you want to keep learning more useful knowledge about body awareness, posture, movement, hidden health clues, and how to understand the signals your body gives you, join the Thuelf Lateris 6 community. And if this video gave you a new way to look at yourself, subscribe to the channel to support us and give us more motivation to keep creating better, deeper, and more helpful content for you.